Hi, I'm Yolanda Marie. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the chemicals in your body. The Arcturians have channeled me a message that is just wonderful. I'm going to play it for you right after I just sort of introduce what it is they're talking about, okay? So basically, this is all about the small occurrences that happen throughout the day, okay? Every day, small reactions to outside stimuli, which are these nuisances that happen, getting caught in traffic, maybe dealing with our children, dealing with people at work, just anything that stubbing your toe, just minute instances that add lower frequency emotional debris into our field. That's what we're addressing today, okay? The chemicals are released habitually. They are involuntary, is what's happening. So what you can learn to do rather is gain, dare I use the word, control over this. We did talk about cycles before and releasing a little at a time these belief systems which are instilled in us into our consciousness previous to when we have awakened, okay? The old belief systems, the old mental patterns that are on a loop playing in our brain. We're releasing all of that emotional debris, all of these thought forms. And we talked about last time thinking of them as structures rather than this abstract concept, okay? So this is not really any different. This is just on a smaller, more frequent scale. Because the constant release of this, the fact that these occurrences happen so frequently throughout the day and we're often even unaware that it's happening until after it's happened and then we shift, right? But in the moment we might not be aware. It is causing more emotional debris to build up in our field. And then so we're releasing, yes, the larger parts of these larger structures a little at a time, but meanwhile we're dumping back in some of the old stuff and reinforcing the old mental patterns, the old imprints. So the Arcturian Council does have a message on this, and I'm going to play it for you right now. To step into the process of attaining true mastership of our authentic power of manifestation and being, begin to control the chemicals. You can guide them. You can steady them, and then eventually you can guide the manner in which they release, in which the neurotransmitters release consciously with practice. This is already done through cognitive therapy on a more subconscious level with humans who are not awake and takes a very long time. However, as your frequency raises, you will be able to more effectively gain control over this part of your process. As you steady yourself, buoy yourself, and move forward, shedding those layers, allowing more of your true frequency and nature to emerge, you will be able to provide for yourself the limits. You will provide for yourself the limits in which you can increase certain chemicals and decrease others as you move forward through this. And as you move forward, the limits will increase. You will be able to have more and more control over the rate of release. This is happening in your body now. Some of you are doing it consciously and unable to grasp or really believe that you are doing it, but you are. Once you believe that you are doing it, your ability to provide this mechanism to yourself will increase. We thank you for your journey and we love you. End transmission. So now I'm going to give you just a few steps to help you. I'm going to use the word operationalize this, sort of set into motion your part in cutting these emotions, these thought forms, these responses, these stressors, cutting them off at the pass, basically, okay? And so the first thing you want to do is to feel the emotion briefly. We're not practicing avoidance here. We are far beyond that, okay? That is sort of the old way of thinking, and I'm not judging that at all. We're letting go of judgment. Everything has had its purpose. Every step that you have taken to get you to this point in your journey has had a purpose. There's no need to judge any of it. But now you're on to the next stage of this. No avoidance. Because when you're in your power coming through the heart space, you don't have to avoid the thing that used to trigger it. Instead, that's what we're doing. We're retraining the chemicals in a way that it will no longer release, that will no longer be a stressor, okay? So what you want to do is feel the emotion briefly. Think about what it is you're feeling in that moment of the stressor. Consciously in that moment, make a decision to change it. This is going to be almost instantaneous, and it won't take long to get to the point where it's like that. It's just an awareness. You don't have to think that in a sentence like, okay, I feel this emotion. It's not going to happen like that. It's just going to be an awareness in your body. We're coming out of all of the semantics of this. It's not that we're no longer going to use words, but we are coming into different forms of communication, and that includes communication with ourselves. Allow yourself to feel what it is coming in. Okay? All right, so you've consciously made a decision to change it. Now you want to move toward 0 point from here. Notice I didn't say get to 0 point. You don't have to get all the way there. You're always moving, always expanding. Think of this as a fluid thing going on in your life. It's fluid. It's not, there's not some goal, some ceiling that you're going to get to and stop. Move toward 0 point. Will you get there? Will you get to the point where eventually you'll just be at 0 point right when you notice it? Yeah, you'll get there. But don't think of it that way. Don't put that, dare I say, stressor or that pressure on yourself. Move toward 0 point, which is the field of consciousness. It's the field of everything, where everything exists and nothing exists. And I call it the void. That's the best way I can describe 0 point to myself. Okay? The void. So you want to move toward this. And at first, you might shift from 0 point straight into a different experience altogether. That's fine. You don't want to try to get, from 0 point all the way to picking a different emotion, all in the same step, right when you're first learning how to do this. So when you first get to 0 point or close to 0 point, in other words, out of that person's cluster of thoughts, right, out of that environment of negativity, okay, or that experience, maybe it's not a person, maybe it's the traffic, maybe it's something else, but you're moving yourself out of that experience in that instant, just in that instant. It doesn't take long. Everything is in an instant. Remember that. You don't have to make it be that right away. I have to say that, but that's what we're moving toward. This is becoming instantaneous. You're going to move toward 0 point. You are going to, perhaps at first, which is a good idea, to shift to a different experience altogether. Okay? And that is going to, again, pull you out of that experience enough to cut the chemical off at the pass. It's already releasing, that's fine, but you're cutting it off at the pass where there's not so much of it coming in to your system, and there's not so much emotional debris setting up in your field as a result of the experience that just happened. All right, so eventually, where you're going with this is that you're going to come from 0 point into choosing a different emotion altogether. All right, you have an awesome advantage here, okay? Because from that vantage point, when you choose a different emotion altogether, and you can stay engaged in the situation, then you always are in control of your situation. Okay, so leaving the situation, the first option is still good. To leave the situation. If you're in the car and it's traffic, then you're leaving it mentally. Okay, so I don't mean get out of the car, within reason, you're leaving the situation altogether. But the next level to that is you no longer have to leave the situation necessarily. You are simply choosing a different reaction, a different chemical, telling a different chemical to release, okay, in place of that old one, which is not going to cause a stressor, okay? It's not going to cause that lower frequency emotional debris to drop into your field. That's where this is going. That's the huge advantage. You're going to come out of the cluster of thoughts, out of the energy fields of the other parties involved. That's a big one, even in traffic, even when you're not face to face with someone. Whatever the situation is, you're always engaging in other people's thought forms and clusters of thoughts, okay? I've heard it described as a thought pendulum. There are many different ways to describe this. It's the same thing. There are many different definitions, and they're all awesome. So however you relate to this, as long as we're on the same page and you understand what I'm saying, it doesn't matter what name you give this, but it's the thought form fields that overlap and come into yours, okay? Because we're all one. Remember that. At our core, all of this is happening. Now, we are all one. We are all part of this field, this stream of consciousness. But you get to choose. You can come out of that cluster of thoughts because whoever else is engaged in this annoyance, right, with you is also releasing debris to some extent, and you don't want to engage them as well. So you're pulling yourself out of that cluster of thoughts, out of their version of events, okay? And so that gives you the window of adjustment. That moment in 0 point gives you that window, that moment to adjust, either switching completely to a different situation or choosing, okay, once you get to that point, a completely different reaction. Now, when I say that, this is different from the adjustment after the fact that we already do. We already are good at having something happen and we adjust after the fact. This is different. This is adjusting closer and closer to basically the point at which it happens. So you haven't allowed so much of that negativity to drop into your field. I just want to be clear of the difference here. Okay, because like anything else, what you give your attention to is going to grow. The more that you exercise this muscle, you're going to get better and better at it, and it's going to happen quicker and quicker. This is the point. I have to say this. It's so important. This is the practice of conscious creation. This is what we're moving into. This is the beginning. Okay? As we come to the point of choosing this emotion from 0 point, we're pulling from the infinite field of everything. That is conscious creation. That's creation, period. We're choosing to learn it consciously, to do it consciously. We're shifting our attention from that which we do not prefer to that which we fully prefer in that moment, though, in the moment. This is changing the way, this whole concept is changing the way that we view our role in our biological processes. It's changing the amount of flexibility and control that we have, and the advanced part of ourselves who we're merging with, our higher selves that we're merging with and becoming conscious of, where we're able to view their perspective and behave from their perspective. Think about that for a moment. That's really what's happening. They're already aware of all this. So we really can just tap into what they're already giving us to operationalize this. This is the new paradigm that we're entering into. It is, I have to say it again, the very beginning steps of this conscious creation that we're moving toward. It's a little more than what we think of as the law of attraction before. That was a wonderful step to enter into. But we're not practicing avoidance here anymore. We're stepping into our full power through our heart spaces. Okay? Without the judgment, without the fear, which is why we have to shift and completely avoid the situation. We're learning how to release it instead. And in this case, we're going to shut that chemical right on down. We're not going to judge it. We're going to place it over here through love and say, don't need you right now. And we are inciting a different chemical to release. Okay? Okay. So I hope this makes sense. I'm sure there will be more on this. There are some other topics that I can't wait to talk to you about also that are along these lines, but have to do with understanding people, so that when you are engaging with people and you understand our old way of being, you understand what motivates people, and you can let go of some of the judgment that way through your understanding of that. And so we'll talk about the old way of being and belief systems and how we operated through that biologically, psychologically. I'll use those old terms, right? And now what we're moving into, what we have moved into, right? So that's going to be a good one. To be continued, as always. So blessings, my friends. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Namaste. Thank you for joining me here. And thank you for sharing your energy. I have to say that. Thank you so much for sharing your loving energy and for getting up and caring about yourself and being on this journey every day. I love you. I love you. Namaste.